Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Stories of people that have been impacted by the healing ministry of Loma University Medical Center. Our special guests today are Fred and Diane from Hong Kong, England, Canada. We're so glad to have each of you here today and to participate in our Journey of Hope. We have people from around the world that are watching at this time. And we want to learn a little bit about you and before we talk about your journey here at Loma Linda. Tell us a little bit about your background, where you're from, what you've been doing. We'll start with you, Fred.
Well, originally we're Canadian, of course, and I'm a chartered accountant by background.
Now, when you say by background, what were you doing?
Oh, I trained as a chartered accountant. I did international tax work for a large firm, international firm called Coopers & Lybrand. I was a partner there. In 1994, I had a client who was growing exponentially and needed some help financially, and I became a partner in that company with my now partner, my current partner. And in 1998, we decided to move to China, to open an operation in China. We manufactured in Canada up to that point, and actually we continued until 2003. But we went to China and realized that it was an opportunity for us to go there and that it was necessary for our business.
Now, we're talking about manufacturing. A lot of things people can manufacture. What are you talking about manufacturing?
We manufacture water dispensers.
Water dispensers.
Yes.
We'll learn a little bit more about that and the impact that it makes on different places around the world.
Yes.
But you were an accountant, so how did you get into the, I mean, was it, you were a client, working with a client?
Well, I did tax work. I was a tax accountant.
Okay.
Actually, for a period, I had worked in, I did international tax work, and I'd worked in the States, in Manhattan, in Rockefeller Center. Did a stint there on a sabbatical from a Canadian firm. And then went back to Canada, and I had a number of different clients that I helped.
But you must have gotten to the point in your life when you were ready to make some kind of a change.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of things in my life, Lynn. I've done a lot of things, and at some point I came, and I always was interested in manufacturing. I saw a lot of clients, and this one particularly interested me because it was a manufacturer. It made products that dispensed water, and water is good for health. And we know this every day. When we went to the treatment room, we were required to drink several cups of water before we went in.
Right.
And water is necessary for us. And so I liked it. I liked the product. I thought it was a good product, and the rest is history. Okay,
well, we'll learn a little bit more about that. Diane, I know you've had some background in actually some areas in health that you were working at, and you're telling me a little bit about some of the work you were doing in Canada. Why don't you tell us what you were doing?
I had started a small studio to practice massage and baby massage. At that time I had my small daughter, and taught people a lot about stress release. If I had a nickel for every time I told somebody to drink more water, I'd be a rich woman. Just simple lifestyle changes, taking time and so on. And I started to teach at local colleges. Really, really enjoyed it. But after 12 or 14 years of that, I guess it was about 14 years, just after Fred and I had partnered together, we needed somebody to go to Europe and look after the company there. So at that time, that was when we moved the family to England. And then I stayed there while Fred was jetting back and forth between England and China and Canada and international customers, which I would join him on when I could. My family would come and look after Katie while we would go and do things together for the company. But I held the fort, if you will, in England.
Oh, and whereabouts in England were you?
Just south of Manchester, in a little village called Gosworth, which is right close to the Peak District, which is where everybody goes hiking in England, and beautiful hills and dales and big trees and stone walls. It kind of looks like where the Hobbit came from, you know, so
sure.
Beautiful part of England.
So now, when you're manning the shop there in England, are you confined? Are you doing some traveling out Europe, or?
Yes, I did some travel, again, somewhat limited by being a mom and needing to be sure that care was appropriate for my girl. But certainly I got involved in our, first of all, English Trade Association, and then started to attend the European Association. There's a lot of regulations in Europe for any product touching food. Water is a food. So we had to stay abreast of all of that, and Fred was unable after a time to continue his commitment to those places, those meetings. So I started to do that, and because I was pretty good at attending meetings and having comments and opinions and taking initiative and joining committees, eventually I kind of worked my way up to the executive council of those associations.
So I mean, are we talking about a broader part of Europe that you're on this, on an international?
Well, there's the British Water Cooler Association, which I was on the executive council, the European Bottled Water Association, for which I'm also on the executive council still, and the International Council of Bottled Waters, which I just joined a couple of years ago, and that's actually worldwide. So now that our daughter's at university, I can do a little more of that. And Fred tends to accompany me as the spouse on those trips.
And so in a supportive
yes,
role.
which is a bit of a switch.
Yeah, but it is. Well, tell me, and tell our group, Fred, apparently a few years ago, you know, everything's been going fine, the business is growing and flourishing, and everybody's kind of traveling back and forth, and you're kind of managing the shop over there in England. And then a couple of years ago, for the first time, apparently you found out that maybe you're not Mr. Invincible. Something happened, and what happened?
Well, what happened was Diane had noticed a couple of times when I was getting a little stressed out, and I don't get too stressed out, but occasionally, that I was holding my chest. So she said, hey, when was the last time that you've had a complete medical? And it had been some years before.
Couldn't really remember when it was.
It was difficult.
Yeah.
So,
and when you talk about stressed out, are we talking about an 8-hour day that you were putting in?
Well, most days we'd work 12 to 16 hours.
Okay.
And that would include weekends quite often.
So you're putting in some heavy hours.
Sure.
And flying.
And flying, and in between,
yes.
and everything else.
Yes,
and
when
so,
I wasn't working, I was
I
flying.
don't know if he might be an A-type personality, but...
oh, yes, I'd say an A-type.
An A-type personality. So all of a sudden, she notices that you're kind of holding your chest.
Yes.
Okay, and why were you holding your chest?
It's just a reaction to the stress. So there was some stress,
Going
pains, pangs, whatever. So maybe there was something going on, and sometimes you don't think much of it because you're so busy with your own problems.
Sure.
That you don't actually.
You kind of ignore it.
You don't look after your health, and clearly I'd not been looking after my health. So we needed to take a look and find out if there was anything wrong with me. And that led me into a complete physical. That involved ECG and a PSA test. And lo and behold, I seemed to be very, very healthy on a lot of bases, but they identified something that wasn't working quite right on the left side of my heart, and said that I should go see a cardiologist. And they identified that my PSA level was a little bit raised. So
you go in because you have chest pains, you get a complete physical, and they begin eliminating different things. What did they finally find out about your heart?
After a series of tests, they found out I had something called a cardiomyopathy. What is simply put, it's the left side of my heart doesn't pump quite as well as it should. My arteries are open, which we eventually discovered, so my risk of actual immediate heart attack is not high, and the left side of the heart can be, the pumping mechanism can be supported a little bit with medication. So it was relatively good news after...
Regarding the heart?
Regarding the heart, yes. It was relatively good news. It could have been a lot worse.
Oh, sure.
So that was...
What did this do? I mean, even when you begin thinking that you got a heart, I mean, a problem with your heart, what did that do to you?
Immediately, I said I had to start slowing down, paying attention, exercising. I immediately got into an exercise regime, changed my diet, eliminated a lot of things, got off the cholesterol-producing items as much as I could. I used to be a lover of bacon and eggs in the morning, you know, the good old Western breakfast.
Omelets?
Omelets, oh, big, with lots of cheese.
Cheese.
running
Oh,
out
lots of
those.
cheese.
Yeah, yeah, lots of cheese.
And this, probably, you weren't that interested in that.
Oh no, he'd bring a big plate for me of omelet and sausage and toast, and I'd eat a tiny little part of the omelet and half a piece of toast and maybe a sausage, and he'd eat the rest of
He'd
it
take
along
care
with his first.
too. Oh, yeah. Well, when it tastes good, it's good.
Yeah,
It's good,
yeah,
absolutely.
But you begin to realize that you needed to make some changes. Did you hear the clock of mortality, where you begin saying, hey, you know, I'm not going to live forever?
Definitely, definitely. That was a starting point.
And kind of a turning point for
yeah,
you then.
yeah. I'm not going to live forever, but I'm going to try my best to live as long as I can. And I realized that I needed to change what I was doing. So really it was 3 prongs. It's diet, it's exercise, and it was a work style.
So you'd been running before, but running back and forth to meetings in different places. And
Oh, yes,
across
to catch airplanes.
To catch airplanes, that's right. And always behind, and pressure, pressure, pressure. So because of this physical, and they began giving you different tests and everything, they discovered that you had a large PSA, a rising PSA, or just what did they tell you?
It was elevated enough that they were concerned. So it was about 3.8 at that point.
Which is relatively low.
Yes.
But he'd had previous ones that had been lower.
Some years before.
Oh, that's
Some years before.
very, for those that are watching, I mean,
Yes.
that's a very important point.
It is.
It can be low, but if it goes up, if it goes up 3/4 of a point,
Yes.
you know, there's a good chance that something's happening.
Sure.
So did you know anything about PSA at that point?
A little bit, because I had previous tests, and so I understood it a little bit, and of course was equally mildly concerned about it. I say very mildly.
Sure.
The focus was on the heart issue at that point, and I was referred then to a urologist who
And
took
what
on my
happened?
case. Well, he advised me that it might be. At some point, he said it might be worth doing a biopsy. He said, really, I'd be incorrect not to say that you should really have one, but we could also redo the test in case there was an aberration in the test.
And that occasionally happens.
Yes, after 3 months, which we did actually because of my travel schedule. It turned out to be about 5 months.
Kind of put it off, and I've got a
Sure.
few things to take care of, and so anyway, 5 months later you come back and you apparently had another PSA.
Yes.
Another
You
blood
also
test?
took some antibiotic, didn't you, during that period of time to make sure that
That it wasn't
PSA
an infection.
wasn't an
Yeah.
infection?
I mean, often the doctors will suggest that they put you on an antibiotic to,
might have that in
to
the wrong
see if
order.
it'll
Yes.
drop down. And anyway, at the end of this period of time, you come back, your business is taking care of a few things, and you go back for a second test, and apparently.
Yes.
And what did they find?
It's gone up to 5.2.
So it didn't go down, it
went
went
up.
up
Yes.
in a period of about 5 months.
Yes.
So then what is the news that the doctor shares with you?
At that point, the doctor said, we really should get on and do this biopsy. He says, I don't really think, I'm assuming it's not cancer, but
I mean,
we
you're
should,
healthy looking.
but we should eliminate it.
Sure,
No
which is a
symptoms.
good observation by the doctor.
Yes.
It's risen, and because it has risen over this period of time, just to eliminate the possibility, we better do a biopsy. So they did the biopsy, and then what?
The biopsy results came back. We were called in to talk to the urologist, and the urologist.
See, when you discover that you have cancer, it's a family that's involved. The entire family's involved, and here, so the two of you come in, and it's a face-to-face meeting apparently.
Yes.
They sit you down, and what do they share?
They say, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. You have cancer. And interestingly, what we were offered was, did we want to have a few moments to digest it, thinking that I might faint or something.
Or I might cry
You might
or
cry.
something.
You need a few minutes together. Do you want to talk about this and let it absorb?
But when you're in business as long as I am, you deal with the
Here
hard
and the now.
rolls, and okay, we've got that, so what do we do? right? It's basically...
This is why you're still sitting there. You're processing. Well,
Yes.
okay, what's the next step?
Yes.
And how did this hit you?
I actually, my first thought was, well, that can't possibly be right. And
Not my Freddie.
yeah, and then when he didn't say, but it could be wrong and we'll recheck it or anything, and he started to talk in quite a lot of detail about the biopsy and how many of the cores had evidence of cancer and what kind of cancer, and explained. He was very good about explaining the Gleason score
The
and
technicalities of the whole
yeah,
thing.
he was very good
But
at
he leaves
that.
no doubt that he's got cancer.
Yeah, there was no room for that being wrong. So I actually just really, for the most part, sat quietly and let Fred kind of...
So this was probably an interesting observation for her to just sit there and let him think and let him absorb the whole thing.
in a lot of ways, that was true through the whole following process, too, that Fred really took the lead in determining...
It's his, I mean, he has the disease, and he's the one that really has to make the decision. So what happened then?
We immediately started reading whatever we could find to read about prostate cancer. We took a few days. We ended up taking a few days off and going to our house in Quebec and digested it.
So how did you happen to come to Loma Linda?
Well, after being, basically I'd got to a point where I decided to have surgery. I'd had all the options listed to me, photon therapy, brachy, and surgery. And I decided to have robotic surgery, and there were only three robotic machines, and it was going to be done in the UK. And I had booked my surgery. I have a habit of getting up early in the morning. I'm an early morning person. So I get up and usually I work on my computer. This particular morning I turned the television on to BBC News. There's a BBC News channel we were in the UK at our house there. And there was a little clip about a young boy, 10 years old, who was going to the US for proton therapy for a brain tumor. And there were a number of interviews. It was a nice clip, actually. BBC interviewed several cancer research doctors in the UK. And what I got out of that was that their proton therapy wasn't being offered in the UK because the machines were too expensive. It wasn't because the treatment was bad. Nothing like this. In fact, they wish they had more funding so they could have proton machines. So that started the ball rolling. That day I was 10 days away from surgery. I spent Googling proton therapy, ended up knowing all the centers, including Loma Linda that was here. Saw I think a clip that had been aired on another network in the US from a fellow there that had the treatment, and learned as much as we could. And by Monday, I was on the phone to Loma Linda and several other institutions in the US that was offering it to see whether I would be a candidate. Loma Linda was the most responsive, the most caring. When they said they would phone back, they phoned back. Good. When I asked them questions, they would tell me approximately when they would get the answers, because they might not have the answers directly, and they always lived up to what they said. I felt it was very caring. The other institutions were a little bit more mechanical, I found. So when it came to choosing an institution to have the treatment in, Loma Linda was number one.
So you came here.
We did. They sent the book in 2 days, Lynn.
Oh,
we spoke to them, and 2 days later we had the book in our hands in England. I mean, it was just...
I'm glad that we were so responsive. So you came here and you completed your treatments. Tell us about the experience, because I know that you didn't just show up for your treatments, but you were actively involved in the times that you were here. I know that you were actively involved. Tell us a little bit about what you did while you were here.
Well, right away we got here, and Fred was measured for his pod, and we were given the initiation process began. But it was going to be a few weeks wait between the time that was going to happen and when our treatment started. And we thought about going back to Canada maybe for Christmas, but we really felt like we'd started our journey, and we needed to just stay on that journey. Fred in particular was keen to just stay on the path. So that meant a lot of time between then and now, and we said, right, then we better get involved. So at that time we started to come to the Wednesday night support groups that you host so well, and the Tuesday night patient-led potluck suppers. Right away we began to introduce ourselves to people in the waiting rooms. Right away I would go with Fred when he was there. We went to the restaurant tours, even though we weren't yet having treatment.
This was all before you got started?
Yes. So we'd already made some friends, and of course you know what people are like. They start talking about, I mean, the guys, I've never seen so many guys talk about prostates and body function so comfortably in such a group of lay people. And it was really important, I felt, to keep contact with those people. So we did, and enjoyed Christmas dinner at your house. And it was very shortly after that I was at a patient-led potluck where somebody was singing and playing guitar, and I said to him, well, I can sing a little bit, so you know, maybe we should practice a few songs and we can be the entertainment one night. As it turned out, that didn't really work out with him. He left and asked me to be the entertainment coordinator for the potluck, if I wouldn't mind, and it was a bit awkward because I hadn't really intended on taking anything on, but Fred had already taken on a volunteer job at the potlucks, and I thought, okay, so we can both have a volunteer job.
So the two of you were actively involved. I want to know, what kind of a difference, looking back on this experience now, what kind of a difference has it made on you in having cancer and coming to Loma Linda?
It's given me a break from, albeit forced, it's a bit of diversion on the journey I was otherwise leading, and this is very much part of the life journey, and brought us both to Loma Linda. I mean, we are very busy people otherwise. You've heard what Diane's involved with.
I know you're both A-type personalities.
Sure. So this has given us basically 3 months to spend time together with a common focus. I mean, it's a family disease, cancer.
Yes.
You know, we both share in the issue. I get the treatments, but she's here along with me. And it's given us a time to heal in many different ways, and that includes healing, improving our relationship, spending time together, because we're very, very busy and off in different directions, and sometimes I have to go to one part of the world and Diane's in another part of the world. So in the last at least 7 or 8 years, we've had long periods of time where we're not even together.
So now you were able to spend some quality time together.
For sure.
What difference is having cancer making on both of you? Diane.
Well, maybe I can speak a little bit about that, because I think I have always been, since I was a teenager, I had made a lot of changes in my diet, ate a more plant-based diet, and had sort of a more holistic frame, and Fred came from a very different background, and I always felt like I was kind of forcing that on him, or that it was kind of not really what he wanted to be doing. And what has happened for me is that he is now involved in that, choosing that, happy to choose that, and it feels like it's an area of my life that we're sharing now, that was kind of my thing before, that has and of course it's good for both of us. It encourages me, and certainly working out, we've been at the Drayson Center, I'd say 3 to 5 times a week, and for as long as we can go for. You know, we can do it 2 hours pretty handily.
That's great.
And that's been great for just, we noticed our metabolism generally, our general personal happiness quotient goes up when you're exercising
Sure.
more, and that's been really neat. But it's also been spiritual time, and I think one of the things it's done for me is and probably us, I don't want to speak totally for Fred, but given me a greater understanding of the Christian life that the Seventh-day Adventists lead. I've developed a great respect for the work that's done here. I've seen lots of healthcare in different situations, and I've never seen anything like Loma Linda. And I'm an advocate now for both the practices and also the healthcare mode that you choose to offer here. That's for me really important.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. We've got just a second here. We're going to take a look at a couple pictures here, and quickly tell us where these pictures are. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first picture is of us, Diane and I, at the Mission Inn here in Riverside, a city quite near Loma Linda.
Okay.
At Christmas.
Tell us.
That's our daughter Katie, who's now studying Chinese in Beijing. Our other daughter Vanessa, who is in Calgary. Fred beside the water cooler in
Okay,
Loma
tell us
Linda.
the significance of this water cooler. We've just got a few seconds left.
Very
here.
quickly on where the treatments are done on B-level, everybody's expected to have 2 cups of water to fill the bladder before they go in for treatment, and lo and behold, it's our water cooler that they're taking it out of. I had no idea when I came here. What a surprise, and of course I'm just pleased as punch that that's in B-level.
We are also.
Yes.
And this is, you're leading out at the Wednesday night meeting, and what do we have here?
That's us on a sailboat of a former patient who we've befriended and helped me with a lot of information before I came here, and he invited another patient and us around Christmas to go on a little boat ride, and there we are in his sailboat.
Thank you for being with us, and I believe that we have terminated the program.
Already, we're so over.
I believe it is over, yes.